Deshaun Watson never steps on the football field again, right? For anyone. I don't think for anyone. I don't think we ever see him play football again.
No, never play football again. I mean, he may come out, he may step on like a high school football field to coach somebody one day.
Yeah, if he sees a masseuse somewhere. He'd run onto the field in that game.
So my Achilles isn't that bad, guys.
It's fine.
Welcome in, Sports Bluff family. Week 7's in the books, and it was much better, much improved from Week 6. Last week was a tough slate of games to watch, but this week, oh boy, it was probably the best week of the season so far, wouldn't you say?
I think by far this was my favorite week. So many excellent games. We've still got Monday night to come. By the time this podcast is out, probably people already have seen the Monday night games, but you had so many great games in the early window. Then you had the Chiefs-Niners in the late window. It was just great. After last week, which was a huge disappointment, we figured this week would come back and deliver a bunch of marquee matchups. That was the thing. This week had a bunch of big matchups, and they all delivered. They were all great games. I had 4 games and then Red Zone, and the 4 games, I wouldn't even watch a Red Zone because I was just looking at the 4 games because there was always something happening. It was an incredible week. What did you think? Just random, curious question. How'd you feel about your team, the Bills, their first game with Amari Cooper? I know it was against the Titans, but they struggled early. They ended up getting ahead at the end. How'd you feel just watching it? Because I didn't pay very close attention to that game.
Yeah, I think that this was definitely a step in the right direction for the Bills. I think it was slow developing, right? So the connection between them, I don't think you really saw it till the second quarter, I believe, was that first pass to Amari Cooper for the touchdown. And after that, things just kind of took off. Keon Coleman showed out this game. He had a terrific game, and I think it was a good matchup. Everybody was ready for Cooper, covering Cooper, left Coleman kind of on an island by himself, oftentimes with just one defender to beat. So it was a great game for him. I'd like to see them utilize the run more, especially when we get up early. But, nonetheless, I think this is a step in the right direction. I'm not saying everything is fixed and peachy, but with it being the first week that Amari Cooper is inside the Buffalo Bills team in the locker room, I would say it's successful.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you worried at all about Josh Allen? Because it feels like, again, like I said, I didn't really watch the game because I was watching all the other matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Is he playing as bad as the numbers reflect?
No. Okay. Well, I say no because up until this point, we haven't had a solid receiver. You remember Shakir was out for a game or two, and that kind of left him hopeless. But when he needed to put it on the line and get a first down, he can still utilize the legs. But he's had a couple of those games this year where he has that ghost look about him again, where he's just like he's seen a ghost and he's kind of like out of his element a little bit. But I think bringing Amari Cooper in is going to give Josh that comfort blanket that he needs. That sounds weird talking about a grown man, but I think that's what he needs in order to be his most successful self. Josh Allen without a wide receiver to throw to is not a great Josh Allen.
Well, the good news is they're going to have a lot of time to figure it out. They're almost a shoe-in to win the East. They are atop the AFC East at 5-2.
Especially after tonight.
Exactly. The Jets lost tonight, so the Dolphins are 2-4. Jets are 2-5. I mean, it's the Bills and then a bunch of crap. So you never know. That's the thing. You could be mediocre all season and then put it together and win a playoff game or two. So they're going to make the playoffs. It's just, can they get a good playoff matchup, capitalize on it? I didn't mean to divert into total Bills conversation. I was just curious because I know we weren't covering it in the show.
I'll say this. Josh went 21 for 33, 323 yards, and 2 touchdowns today. Not a bad day.
Not a bad day at all.
There's been much worse in Josh Allen's, reservoir of games. But this game was actually a pretty solid game, pretty solid outing for Josh Allen. I'm just looking here. The top target today was Keon Coleman, 7 targets, no touchdowns. Amari Cooper was the only touchdown through the air. Ty Johnson looks like scored the other one. They fed the ball like 7 to Keon Coleman, 5 to Cooper, 7 to Shakir, 6 targets to Kincaid. So, you got Amari Cooper in. It seems to be that Josh is kind of, slinging the ball more places than he has been in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I hope so. And that'll allow Coleman to continue to develop more because he's good. Coleman is a really talented receiver. Look at what he's doing already as a rookie. But the Titans, as far as defensive yards a game allowed, they are the best defense in the league. They allow the fewest yardage per game. Now, they allow points, but on average, they only allow 272 yards a game. So for the Bills to go in there, move the ball, put up points, that's impressive because as much of a disaster as Tennessee is, their defense has been good.
Yeah, and we put up 389 total offensive yards, and we held them to under 300, which is pretty good for the Bills. The Bills have kind of struggled in some situations defensively, but only allowing 10 points to the Titans. I know it's not a high-powered offense by any means, but even holding Tony Pollard at bay was a really key to success in order to win this football game today.
It's still an NFL team. You got to beat who's in front of you. A lot of teams did that. We got a lot on the docket today. We got Packers, Texans, Lions, Vikings, Chiefs, Niners, a Deshaun Watson situation, the Seattle Seahawks. That's all coming up. If you're ready, my friend, I say we jump right into it.
Let's go. Green Bay somehow pulled out a victory against the Houston Texans today in a thrilling game, actually. A little bit sloppy on Jordan Love's part, but other than that, Josh Jacobs seemed to get his legs under him. It was a pretty solid outing for both teams, I would say. You could definitely feel the loss of Nico Collins, I think, for the Texans. You had some of these passes to Tank Dell where if they were maybe made to Nico, it probably would have connected more than it did. I think Tank Dell was targeted like 5 times and missed every one of them for whatever reason. But overall, do you think that this game was enough to say that Green Bay can now win the NFC North?
I thought at the beginning of the season, I picked Green Bay to be the 1 seed in the NFC.
You did?
Like I picked them to be the 1 seed. I picked them to win the NFC North. Obviously, the way this season has gone, that doesn't look amazing, at first. But what's really impressive about Green Bay is that they survived the Jordan Love absence. The fact that they were able to remain not just relevant while he was gone, but good, to win games. They won games with their backup quarterback. And then they came in here, and I thought this was a big test because they lost to the Vikings. That was Jordan Love's first game back. You could feel the jitters. I think 100% they can win the NFC North. I'm still rocking with them. I feel very good about them. Right now, Ryan, the Lions are atop the NFC North, 5-1. Vikings, 5-1. And then Green Bay, 5-2 because they haven't had their bye week yet. So they're right there. I mean, and then Chicago's only a game back as well. This is a tight race for the NFC North. And I think on any given Sunday, Green Bay could beat anybody. I thought they looked incredible today. I really did. Jordan Love, yes, you mentioned he is a little off the wall. He's got that Favre in him. It's like a Green Bay quarterback thing. He gets a little reckless. But overall, I thought he was pretty good today. 24 for 33, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. And the picks I didn't think were egregious. I thought he looked the best that he has since he came back from the injury. It finally looked like comfortable Jordan Love, what we expected. And let's take a look at the box score right here. As you can see, they obviously dominated the Texans in passing, 195-55. Texans dominated them on the ground because that was most of the Texans' offense, but they still had 82 rush yards. They were 4 for 10 on third down. Texans were 4 for 13. 2 for 2 in the red zone. Texans were 2 for 4. The difference, 3 turnovers for the Packers. Time possession almost even. That's what's really surprising is that you have the 3 turnovers and that the Packers were able to survive it. Usually if you've got 3 turnovers and the other team doesn't have any, that's an issue. The big one coming on the special teams muff punt that allowed the Texans to recover and score. And that's kind of the story of the game because without the turnovers, this game isn't close. The reason I'm impressed the most, and I'll kick it to you, and the reason I think Green Bay can win the NFC North definitively isn't because of Jordan Love, it's because of the defense. And that is what we've wondered. We have worried about Green Bay in the past. Matt LaFleur bringing in the new coordinator. How is the Green Bay defense going to be? Are they going to finally be a decent unit? And so far, they've just gotten better each week. They're 15th in defensive yards allowed a game. They're 11th in points allowed a game. They're only giving up 20 points a game. And they just get better. They hit you with a lot of disguises. They blitz. They're able to get pressure. Their secondary is good. Xavier McKinney is a realization. I mean, they are just a well-rounded football team. And if you have a great defense, like it seems they do, you can beat anybody in the league.
I agree that Green Bay is a lot better than I thought they would be. Am I ready to say that they can win the NFC North? No, because there's two teams in that division that I do believe are better than Green Bay at this point in the season. Whether or not it ends up that way is another story. But I think this team is just a little bit too young for me to really give that confidence boost for me to put them atop the NFC North. I do think that the Lions and the Vikings are the NFC North is probably one of the best, most stacked divisions in all of the NFL. But ultimately, I think that it's just a little bit early for Green Bay. I think give them 2 more seasons with Jordan Love under center, maybe they'll work some things out. But for them, like you mentioned, losing Jordan Love for a couple of games and still managing to pull out a couple of wins, that's big. That may be the biggest emphasis on why they are 5-2 right now. Like the way that Matt LaFleur used this team to get through that adversity is really astonishing, to be honest. Malik Willis was able to get into this Green Bay offense and win football games.
And by the way, not just win football games, he looked good. Malik Willis looked good.
Which, again, brings back the point of the whole Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur debacle. Right. I think Matt LaFleur is a good football coach, guys. I think it's okay to say it now. The biggest thing about Green Bay and the most, I think, maybe overlooked part of the game today is Josh Jacobs. I mentioned it earlier at the start of the segment. Josh Jacobs going, I think, 12 carries for 76 yards. He hasn't been able to put together a solid performance most of the season. He's been just kind of that mid-range to low-end running back. And today you saw that Josh Jacobs still has what it takes to be a starting running back in the NFL. There was mention of that second-string rookie guy, I think Emmanuel something anyway, taking over the starting role. Yeah, Emmanuel Wilson. But I think today showed that he still has it. Green Bay plays a lot better when Josh Jacobs plays better. And we said it, and we say it every week, without a running game in this modern-day NFL, you are not a successful winning team. Today showed that they can be both. They can be a passing team. They can be a running team. They need to utilize both of those going through and fix those mistakes, those rookie mistakes, and maybe the hot hand mistakes, like you mentioned, like kind of the Favre situation that Jordan Love tends to make.
Right. I don't know if you get rid of that, though. I think that might just be in his DNA, and it might just be something you have to live with. We'll see.
It'd be nice to be living without them.
I agree, but I mean, it might be what you got. To your point about Jacobs, it's not even that I thought he was like elite today. He struggled in the first half. They really couldn't get him going a ton, but what I love is they just stuck with it. And you look, it's like 12 carries. That's not a ton, but 12 carries for 76 yards, you're averaging over 6 yards a carry. And they gave it to him in pivotal moments, and he was able to get a couple first downs, particularly in the second half. I just remember him making plays when they needed it to. He made a couple big plays in this game, and it was the first time where he felt like he became an impact player on that offense. This offense is averaging 383 yards a game. That's 4th in the league. They are rolling. They're rolling on both sides of the ball, and I think they're going to just get better. They got the Jaguars next week. After that, they've got Detroit. And Detroit is the bully of the division, especially after today. We'll obviously be talking about that game. I think that would be a statement. If Green Bay could go in there and beat Detroit, I mean, the division, that announces to everyone else, hey, we can take this, because they're almost too young to know better. I'm excited to see what happens. This race is exciting. The NFC North race it's just thrilling.
Let's move over to the other side of the football and talk about the Texans real quick. And it was a very down day for C.J. Stroud, his worst game of his NFL career. Tristan, talk to us about how confident you are, your confidence level in the Texans after this loss.
Am I confident for them to win a playoff game, for them to win the division? Like, where do you want me to answer it? Like Super Bowl contender? What scale
I want
are
you
we
to
right
answer it as I want you to answer it as a fan, and your Super Bowl or playoff outlook. And then I want you to kind of dial in on C.J. Stroud and talk about his issues today and if those can be remedied and what they would need to do so.
Okay, so as a fan, if I was a Texans fan, just in general, I still feel good about the team because Green Bay is one of the best teams in the league, right? Green Bay, I think we can agree, is a Super Bowl contender, at least in the NFC. Like it's not, no team has really separated themselves other than maybe Baltimore and Kansas City, which we'll talk about. But I think Green Bay is a great football team, and the Texans went in there and, I mean, could have won the game. They were close to winning. It's not like they got blown out. They were back and forth. So I would feel good about the Texans because you've got a great quarterback. And when you have a great quarterback, you can win every game. Literally. It doesn't matter what, it's the same thing with the Chiefs. People are like, oh, the Chiefs don't blow people out. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter though, because it's close late and the quarterback makes things happen. And CJ Stroud is one of those quarterbacks. He's great from the pocket. I think obviously they can win their division. They should win their division. Maybe they can win a playoff game, but I do have big concerns for the team. And the main one is what bit them today, and that's the offensive line, Ryan. That was the story of the Texans in this game. They really couldn't move the ball. I mean, if you look at CJ Stroud, what did he have? 86 yards. They were able to run it. Joe Mixon had 115.
86 yards today, right? He's never finished a game that he started, minus week 14 against, I think, the Jets maybe, where he had a concussion. He has never thrown for less than 100 yards in any game in the NFL until today. He was also pressured on 48% of his dropbacks.
Absolutely. And so you bringing up the pressure, let's just go ahead and look at that. I made this graphic. This is the top 5 most hurried NFL quarterbacks. CJ Stroud is number 1, 29 hurries. Dak Prescott's tied for number 1 at 29 as well. Sam Darnold, 23. Lamar Jackson, 22. I wonder how much of his is like kind of scrambling and creating it, but we know his line issues. And then Geno Smith at 20, and we know the issues Seattle's had. The fact that CJ Stroud is atop that list is worrying. This offensive line is an issue. I know Green Bay's defense was scheming it up. I know they were sending exotic blitzes. It wasn't a ton of just whiffs, but man, he was running for his life. And to your point earlier, when you have a shoddy offensive line that can't hold up in protection, and you've lost Nico Collins, and Tank Dell hasn't looked the same coming back off that injury, you're limited to basically just Stephon Diggs. And I think that's what bit the Houston Texans today. It wasn't just the offensive line being an issue, which it has been. It's the offensive line being an issue against a great defense when you don't have Nico Collins and Tank Dell's not performing. Nico Collins, we don't know when or if he'll be coming back, but I don't think the offensive line fixes itself. So I don't know if Joe Mixon can repeat this level of success every week, because without him, they get blown out today.
He's in the top 5 of most sacked quarterbacks in the league. He's been sacked 20 times now. 4 of those came today against the Packers. And I heard that he actually called Daniel Jones, and then they both three-wayed in Deshaun Watson and asked which massage parlor they needed to go to tonight. I don't know if they figured it out yet, but just look for that on your front page newspaper come Monday morning. Daniel Jones, by the way, sacked 8 times today.
Yeah.
8.
That's just the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
beginning.
That's 2 hands of sacks. You had to use 2 hands and almost your toes to count how many sacks Daniel Jones had. 4 of those for CJ Stroud. This is a huge problem for the Texans. If they expect to make a deep playoff run here, or a playoff run at all, whether it be deep or shallow, they need to fix this, and I mean immediately. It's also strange how good of the running game is with Joe Mixon, right? But the protection is not there for CJ Stroud. And a lot of those runs are designed outside runs and sweeps and things like that. So it's blocking versus protection, 2 different things.
2 completely different things. You're 100% right.
A lot of times you're at least decent at, if you're great at run blocking, you're at least decent at pass blocking. Nope.
No, not in this case. Now, I don't think they're as bad as the numbers suggest sometimes, because it's not like they're just getting totally blown up.
No,
whether it's just,
but 20 sacks you can't keep doing that.
No, and being the most hurried quarterback in the NFL. Not if you want to win a Super Bowl, obviously, but I don't think it can fix itself either. And as you said, like, how much will that run game be able to keep it up? Now, I wonder just on the other side, the defense is fantastic. They're the 3rd best defense when it comes to yards a game allowed. They only allow 270 points a game allowed. They are 17th, so not great, but they're only averaging giving up 22.7 points a game. So that's a really good defense. If the defense can continue to play at that level, the offense will get away with it. And that's how they've gotten away with it so far. That's why they're 5-2, because when the offense struggles, the defense, holds other teams, and other teams aren't putting up 30 on them. So CJ Stroud doesn't have to go and outscore them. You just wonder, as the year wears on and Joe Mixon wears on, can this be kept up in January? And even though you trust CJ Stroud to go make you a play in the big moment, he struggled to do it today because of the lack of receivers and the offensive line. And I think we're at the point in the season where on the offensive line, you got what you got.
Let's talk about this divisional matchup that was probably my favorite game to watch today. The Vikings, the Lions, a close game. Jared Goff saved the day for the Lions today, and I don't care what anybody says, that drive at the end was spectacular. The Lions barely squeaked out a victory against the Vikings, 31-29. I thought the Vikings could do it and remain undefeated. I was incorrect. So, my question to you will be, we had the Vikings up here in the NFC. They were undefeated. Like nobody could hold a torch to these guys. You said the Sam Darnold regression was coming. I don't believe it did today. But was this win enough to take the Lions over and give them the mantle to be the best team in the NFC? What do you say?
I think absolutely. And if you want to go back and check our picks video, I picked the Lions to win this game because I just figured they would be a more physical football team. And I think, although the Vikings are physical as well, I think that came true. I think the game was getting away from Minnesota because think back, if it's not for that David Montgomery fumble that the Vikings scoop and return for a touchdown, game's starting to get out of hand. Lions are driving, trying to go up 2 scores, like trying to really get away from Minnesota and put the game away. Obviously, I'm not saying, well, if this didn't happen, it happened.
Well, the defense made a play.
Exactly. And the Vikings defensive unit is obviously great. They're one of the best defensive units in the league, 6th in defensive points allowed every week. So you can't knock them for that. But it did feel like the Lions were kind of controlling this game for the most part. Sam Darnold did good. Matter of fact, let's just look at the 2 quarterbacks before we look at the box score. Pass yards, almost even, 280 to 259. Touchdown interceptions, Goff 2 and 0. Sam Darnold 1 for 1. Yards per attempt, pretty close. Completion percentage, almost identical, both with 4 sacks. Goff's passer rating a little bit better, but those are almost identical numbers. If you don't mind, let's just go ahead and look at the box score while we're talking about the game. Let's just jump straight into that.
Come on.
Pass yards, identical. Rush yards, identical. Third down, identical. Red zone, 1 for 1 versus none. Turnovers, identical. It is just neck and neck down the board, which I think tells you how evenly matched both these teams are. Yeah. And I think ultimately it just came down to really Detroit being a little bit more physical. Maybe, I hate to say this, but maybe wanting it a little more. And all credit to Jared Goff, who delivered. He delivered. Sam Darnold, and this is kind of the difference for me. Sam Darnold is good, Ryan. I don't know if I trust him to go out there and deliver in a gotta-have-it moment. I do trust Jared Goff, as long as you protect him. If you give Jared Goff time, he will tear you apart. And on that last drive, he overthrew a wide-open touchdown. And I thought, oh no, it's going to bite him. But he was still able to drive him downfield and able to win the game. I think Jared Goff, you could argue, is playing MVP-level football right now. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He has been for the past couple of years. That's what puts Detroit over the edge for me. They have the defense. They have the offense. And they've got the coach, but they've got a quarterback that in the biggest moment, would you trust Jared Goff or Sam Darnold more? I would trust Jared Goff more because while the stats were close, I feel like Goff outperformed Sam Darnold today.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go as far as to say that he outperformed him. They play very similar, but as far as, so you mentioned something that's kind of key is, and experience comes with this, right? Jared Goff's been a quarterback longer in the NFL, starting quarterback, than Sam Darnold has. So, yes, would I rather take Jared Goff, on a 2-minute drive, 4th quarter, trying to win the football game? Absolutely. But as far as talent level goes, if both of these guys play quarterback for a NFL team, they're very evenly matched. I would take either one of them. I wouldn't be upset with either pick. But you have quarterbacks that are really good. Then you have quarterbacks that are clutch. What's the difference? The quarterback that's really good, they really can't ever be this clutch guy, right? A clutch quarterback can have a bad game and still win it. That's the difference to me. So Jared Goff could, today he didn't have a bad game, but those clutch quarterbacks could have a terrible game, quarters 1 through 3. Come 4th quarter, they can put the hat on. We've seen Patrick Mahomes do it. We've seen Josh Allen do it. We've seen Lamar Jackson do it. They could have a terrible game, but yet they still find a way to win. And that's kind of the very definition of a clutch quarterback. You find the way to win in the big moments. So what Jared Goff did today, man.
I completely agree. And the way I can't sum that up better than to look at it right here. So after the fumble and Minnesota scored, Minnesota took the lead. They were up 29-28. Then Detroit, they went 3 and out, -10 yards, punted it right back. Minnesota got the ball, Ryan, leading the game by 1 point. They got the ball with 4 minutes left in the clock. Sam Darnold had the ball and the lead with 4 minutes left. All you got to do is get a couple first downs.
That's
and
it.
They couldn't do it. 3 plays and 6 yards, got to punt it. An Aaron Jones run, and then an incomplete pass on 3rd and 4. They punted it. Jared Goff got the ball, and he drove them downfield for the winning field goal. That was it. It came down to those 2 drives. Now, I know you can say they ran it on 1st and 2nd, but Sam Darnold had a chance on 3rd and 4. He didn't deliver. Jared Goff did. That's the difference in these 2 teams.
So we talk about the Vikings, we talk about Sam Darnold, and really the question now is, do you still believe that the Vikings are a serious playoff threat?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, you can't deny that, because they went up. If you think that the mantle is now passed to the Lions and they're the best team in the NFC, period, they just beat the second best team then.
100%. And this game could have gone either way.
Give me your top 5 NFC teams right now.
In order or just in general?
In general. You have the Lions, the Vikings. I would probably throw Tampa Bay in there.
Okay, so hold on. Lions, Vikings, Packers. And they're all out of the NFC North. So then
again, my statement to the previous segment.
Right.
NFC North is so crazy right now.
So those 3, I think, are a lock. The 4th one, I
wouldn't put anybody in the East in there at all right now. Commanders is the only one I would consider.
Agree, but I want to see more. And especially with Jaden Daniels getting banged up today, let's see him sustain it. I don't mind you saying Tampa Bay, and then I would probably go Arizona as the 5th. I mean, no, sorry, not San Francisco. San Francisco.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I read it, and my brain said one other thing.
Right. I was about to say Arizona. We are not agreeing on that. So I think that 5th spot is the hardest spot. I think those 4 are kind of my solid picks, but I think that 5th spot, the Commanders, the Falcons, and the 49ers could all battle that out, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of them wind up in that 5th spot. My point to this is, out of those 5 teams that we just talked about, 6 and 7, if you want to throw the other 2 in there, you can't deny that the gap between the Lions, the Vikings, and then the 3rd team down is a pretty marginal gap.
I disagree. I actually think I would put Green Bay right there.
I don't know that I'd put them that close, man. Like,
I mean,
I think they have 2.
The Vikings, and we're in a close game. In the first game off Jordan Love, well, it goes back to my point. We'll really find out about the Packers in 2 weeks when they play the Lions, because then you'll see a matchup against who you think's the big dog in that league. But ultimately, I think I'll agree. I'll give you this. I think right now, just to be fair, you would put the Lions and Vikings there because we've seen them do it. We've seen them go head to head. They've got the wins. Green Bay a little bit further down, but Green Bay could easily climb into that spot.
The Kansas City Chiefs are the only remaining undefeated team in the NFL. I didn't make my sign today. Last season, just go ahead and insert the picture right up here if you don't mind, because Mahomes is my daddy. I should have learned my lesson. I've gotten my spanking, and I'll probably get one again before the season's out, because there's something about it that I just feel like it just can't hold up the test of time. We'll see. Patrick Mahomes, you can't ever doubt him. I never actually doubted him. I just thought this was the game that, if they had to lose one, this would be the one. Obviously, this is kind of shaking out to be the Bills and Dolphins situation. The Bills always own the Dolphins, no matter who plays, no matter if every starter's healthy or if they're not. They always find a way to win. The Chiefs are now like this against the 49ers. Shanahan has to be so pissed off today because he can't find a way. And I'm almost to the point, by the way, this is completely off script.
Please.
I think there's something that gets into your head rather than just Mahomes being magical. When you go up against the Chiefs and Andy Reid, something's in your head that makes you play different, like not as good. Because there were some passes that Brock Purdy completely overshot to wide open guys. And not even being pressured, just missed Ayuk on a couple of throws. Ayuk dropped the ball in a perfectly placed over the shoulder pass. Things that you just wouldn't see happen on any given Sunday. But when you go up against the Chiefs, something in the atmosphere changes. I don't know what it is. But do you see what I'm saying, though? It's more than just Patrick Mahomes. Yes, he put on a great performance. He always finds a way to win, but it's something different, man.
What you're saying is 100% fact, because we've seen it, but we saw it with the Patriots dynasty. We saw it with the Alabama dynasty in college. It's teams we're all human. We can't help it. Even if you say, oh, it's just another team, you're going against the best and you're judging yourself by the best. Even if, because like we know the Chiefs offense isn't what they were in 2018 and 19, but people still go into those games thinking, God, we might have to score 30 to beat Patrick Mahomes. Because on the other side, there's a guy that's going to do everything he can to win it, on top of having the best head coach in the league. And then combine that with the best defensive coordinator in the league who gives you, let's just be honest, Spags owns Shanahan. Yeah. I mean, every time. Spags absolutely takes Shanahan to the woodhouse. Now, I know that Brock Purdy was terrible in this game, but it's because of what Spags is dialing up. You're right, though. It's that aura, and clearly the 49ers can't get over it. And I know the score was close most of this game, but just personally, I felt like the Chiefs kind of were in control the whole game. I never doubted they were going to lose it. It just felt like one team was superior to the other, even with all the injuries. You know, the Chiefs lost Juju early, who's already like their fourth-string receiver. They had nobody. The 49ers, they lost Deebo Samuel because he was sick and then ended up losing Ayuk. It was a defensive game, but the Chiefs just controlled it.
So, to that point, did the Chiefs actually win it, or did the 49ers squander it?
The Chiefs won it. Because to say a team squandered it is like they controlled most of the game, they were in a position to win, and they made a mistake or two. The 49ers never really put themselves in a firm position to win this football game because of the way Brock Purdy played, thanks to the defense. I mean, the defense was all after, or the Chiefs' defense was all after San Francisco. We know, this is the thing. I've been saying it for 2 years now. The Chiefs are a defensive football team. It is like the Belichick Patriots. Patrick Mahomes is still there to deliver in the moments you need him to, but it is a low-scoring, defensive, dominant, punch-you-in-the-mouth, physical football team. The 49ers could not run the ball. 14 carries for 58 yards for Jordan Mason. Brock Purdy, 17 for 31, 212 yards, 3 interceptions. It was just, he was getting blitzkrieged by all Spags' blitzes. Even when they weren't getting home, they were forcing him to get the ball quick. It was just domination. I feel like the Chiefs just dominated the football game.
Yeah, and there were certain plays that Brock Purdy connected with, like George Kittle down the sideline on just, it was kind of an underthrown ball, but Kittle made a play.
Right.
They did get a couple of, there was a drive where they had a couple of runs that Jordan Mason finally started opening up that defense a little bit, and then they went away from it. And then they just started throwing the ball again. So I don't know what that was about, but I feel like if the 49ers, if they were able to turn Patrick Mahomes over twice, you have to capitalize on that. You could have put yourself in a position to be 2 scores ahead off of those 2 turnovers, and you didn't. You didn't capitalize.
No, absolutely. So to your point, let's look at their drive chart real quick and then continue your point. So this is the 49ers drive chart, and it's a tale of 2 halves, but you just see mistakes. So the first half, Ryan, punt, 3 plays. Next drive, first play, interception, and then another 3 and out and a punt. 4 plays and a field goal, 3 and out punt, 4 plays and punt, and then a 9-play drive for a field goal here in the first half. Second half, you come out, go 7 plays for a touchdown, and then 7 plays, so you're driving, interception. 9 plays, interception, and then that last drive that was, kind of at the end of the game for a touchdown. But as you see in the second half, they started driving. 7 plays, 23 yards, 7 plays, 46, 9, 65, 8, 65. The problem, those 2 interceptions there in the second half, the defense stepped up. So the 49ers did start to find a rhythm in just actually moving the ball downfield, but they couldn't finish drives, which has kind of been the Achilles heel for the 49ers all season.
So this brings me to another point of topic, which is surrounding the Chiefs. They went into this game as one of the lowest percentage of red zone conversions in the NFL. How happy are you that Kareem Hunt's now on your football team?
It's honestly shocking. I would have never expected this because the Chiefs are in a bad spot without Kareem Hunt. Let's look at the box score while we're talking about it. As you can see, pass yards, 49ers had the edge. Rush yards, Chiefs obviously had the edge. 8 for 14 on third down. Chiefs just kept the drive alive. Other side, 49ers 2 for 11. If we were talking about this, I always highlight the third down, 2 for 11. And there's your mark right there, red zone. The Chiefs 4 for 5. Coming into this game, the Chiefs were one of the worst red zone teams in the league because they're a slowly move the ball downfield. It's not their fault they lost Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. They're dealing with what they got. They can move the ball, but they get into the red zone where it's real easier to defend. It's hard to score in the red zone, and they've struggled. But today, they were able to manage. They were able to punch it in because, like you said, Kareem Hunt. I really can't imagine what this team would look like with Kareem Hunt. Did you ever think he would make this big a difference? He was sitting at home.
I know. It's quite absurd.
Ryan, he looks like a great starting running back in the NFL. It's not like, oh, he's just doing good for the Chiefs. He looks terrific.
And to all the haters of Patrick Mahomes that says that, he is not a great quarterback or whatever, to your, I guess I'll agree with you in some aspect and say that, yeah, Patrick Mahomes isn't playing his best football this year.
Not at all. But you could make an argument to say he's playing the worst football of his career.
But what other team has lost so much talent capital and are able to still be the only undefeated team in the NFL? If I told you preseason that Pacheco, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice would not be all together through, week 6, what would your record prediction be? It wouldn't be 6-0.
I would think best case scenario would be 4-2.
They're 6-0.
I know.
I don't care if Patrick Mahomes is throwing 10 interceptions a game. This defense is stepping up when it needs to, and they found a gem with Kareem Hunt that I don't think they meant to find. I think it was just kind of they stumbled upon it and said, oh, this works.
Well, he started his career at Kansas City, remember? And then they cut him because of all the issues. And then, so I think it's just they needed someone, so they're like, all right, let's try. And you heard them saying like, oh, he's on the practice squad, he's looking good, but he's running over 49ers linebackers.
The biggest stat that stood out to me here in this chart was third downs. 8 of 14. If you can, and this has been true through Patrick Mahomes' career, if you cannot stop Kansas City on third down, which they are, I believe to me, I don't know if this is true or factual or whatever, but to me, they are the hardest team to stop on third downs because they can hit you in those short yard conversions in so many ways. And Patrick Mahomes' pump fakes are deadly. The little flip passes, the shovel passes to the tight end, the pump fake to flip pass, it's like you're hitting 8 buttons on a Xbox controller, at once. It's like a combo move. You can't defend it. So, and that's what makes it so hard. And that's what makes it so hard because you spend all preseason thinking about week 6 when you're supposed to be guarding against Rashee Rice, Pacheco, and Hollywood Brown, and now all of a sudden you have nobodies, and yet they're still scoring points on you. So then you scratch your head and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're not accounting for the magician behind center. So third downs are, if you want to beat Kansas City, you have to stop their third downs. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, you got to get them off the field, and you got to have maintained drives. You got to keep Mahomes on the bench because Mahomes has shifted. And remember when we talked about this last year? Because in the year with the Eagles Super Bowl, the offense was still humming. Defense was great, but the offense was humming. Last year, I came on here after or even way before they lost to the Raiders on Christmas, and I told you, I said, the Chiefs have to just accept that they're a defensive football team. I said, Mahomes has to accept that he needs to play game manager. And we saw him do that at the end of last year, and he's doing it now. It's like you look at his stats. Oh, his stats aren't great. Yeah, they don't have to be. Patrick Mahomes doesn't care about his stats. He doesn't care about awards. He cares about one thing, winning Super Bowls. So he's doing just the bare minimum, what he needs to do to get his team wins. And we talk about it every now and then, and still it seems like people overlook it. I'm just going to say it, and this is just fact, I think. Patrick Mahomes is the best scrambling quarterback in the NFL. Not running quarterback, scrambling quarterback. Obviously, Lamar's the best runner. Josh Allen's a great runner, whatever. But in those plays, it's just amazing. The way he always runs on the downs where you got to have it. That third down where he took up the sidelines and, like you mentioned, did the pump fakes, took off for 30 or something yards. I screamed. I was like, he's gone. He's gone.
You know who is coming in a close second to him this year, surprisingly?
Baker Mayfield?
That's it. As far as being elusive and like a scrambling quarterback, obviously Baker Mayfield is not a rushing quarterback by any means.
Right.
But to get out of a terrible situation in the pocket and get the yards for the first down, him and Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield, are the two best to do it this year.
They'll both do what they need to do. If no one's open, they'll cut it down and run. Ryan, today, we saw Patrick Mahomes take it in and run over a corner for
and looked
the
at him
49ers.
as he fell down.
Lowered his shoulder and sent him to the shadow realm and said, "Clean my fucking shoes while you're down there." And the game was over at that point. The game was over at that point. He's just one of the best football players we've ever seen. The Chiefs continued to be the Chiefs. I think the 49ers are okay. They're just, you really see how different they are when they lose McCaffrey. It takes so much out of their offense.
Oh, sure. I mean, wouldn't yours?
I mean, it's mainly the red zone. Like, we talk about that, but that's where they struggle the most because of losing him.
It is the equivalent of losing Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
It really is, because you build your whole game script around that. So tell me why that you think Jordan Mason is going to be that savior for you. I mean, he's a good running back and all, but he's not Christian McCaffrey.
But Christian McCaffrey's specialness, or his special ability, isn't just running. It's him as like a wide receiver. He runs wide receiver routes. He doesn't run routes like a running back. When he starts running out of the backfield, you have to treat him like a wide receiver. Yep. So if you've got a linebacker or somebody on him, they're getting torched. I don't care how good Jordan Mason is between the tackles. No running backs can do what McCaffrey does as a route runner. And that's just, like you said, that just takes away a huge part of the offense.
This wasn't in the script, but I'm going to throw this out because we didn't really focus in on the 49ers really at all. So I do want to ask you, because we talked about it last segment, about the 5 top NFC teams. The 49ers lost today. Odds are they're probably not getting Christian McCaffrey back. If they do, with a double Achilles injury, it will be probably toward the playoffs if they make it. As it stands right now in the NFC West, they have a pretty good shot at winning that. Seattle's probably going to give them a run for their money. We'll talk about
they have the
head to
head so far. Yeah,
right. And so how that will shake out at the end of the season, who knows? But where it stands right now, and I'm kind of going to ask you what we asked about the Texans. Are you confident? Where's your confidence meter on the 49ers, like, to finish out the season and get into the playoffs?
I feel the same way about the 49ers as I did this preseason. When we did our predictions, I thought they would take a bit of a step back, and they have. The 49ers aren't a Super Bowl team. They're not. Like, let's just be honest. Without McCaffrey, and today, Ayuk, I mean, that leg injury looked bad. I mean, it looked really bad. It looks like he's probably going to be out a while, maybe all season. I don't know. It was rough. So losing him, and it's not like he's been great, but losing him as well. Deebo Samuel, more of a gadget player. Ricky Pearsall came back, so hopefully you can start to inject him. Brock Purdy was terrible. I mean, he was god-awful. We know Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. I just don't think they're all together there. And maybe it's just, I don't know if it's just the McCaffrey thing or if it just starts to unravel. It just feels like, and we talked about this in the offseason, it was such a loud and messy offseason for the 49ers. Remember, there was so much going on. There was so much commotion. It just felt,
Ayuk was on Instagram every day.
Exactly. It just felt out of whack. And that carries over into the regular season. Teams who lose the Super Bowl hardly ever make it back to the Super Bowl the next year. Will they make the playoffs? Probably. I still think they're a good team. They could win a playoff game, but I think that's kind of the ceiling this year. I really do.
I was looking at their schedule. So week 8, next week, they have the Dallas Cowboys. That's a game that I believe they should win. And it's at home too. Then they go on their bye week. But check this out. When they come back, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Green Bay, the Bills. That's a rough ride.
It is, but it doesn't feel like Tampa Bay has really crossed the threshold to like beat the Niners. You know what I mean? Obviously, we'll see how they do against Baltimore. We're recording this before the Baltimore game, but they own Seattle. So yeah. I feel like they can win both of those games. Maybe they lose to the Packers and the Bills. The Bills aren't world breakers or anything. So I can conceivably see them winning all those games. They won't, but I don't feel like they're going into those games greatly outmatched.
They've already beat Seattle once. I don't see them sweeping Seattle.
I don't know.
A divisional opponent. It's just, it doesn't happen often.
But they kind of own them.
Well, yeah, maybe. But it is at Tampa Bay. I think that's kind of scary. And then it's at Green Bay as well and at the Bills. So you are playing on the road, and Brock Purdy is not the best on the road. So it's going to be interesting to see. These next 5 games are really going to tell us a lot about the 49ers and kind of where they stand for the rest of the season.
I agree, man. And last point, I'll tell you who needs to step up more than anybody, the defense. Their defense is just giving up too many points. They've got to get that fixed if they want to be a real contender.
All right, Tristan, we just talked about the Seahawks a little bit, but let's talk about the actual game that they played today. A pretty successful game, beating the Falcons 34-14. It seems like a blowout. I felt like the game looked a little bit closer than that. I know that sounds weird, but I think it was just a couple of crucial errors by Kirk Cousins and the Falcons team that kind of led them down this path. Because Bijan looked great this game. He actually looked like he could play football.
Right.
And I know fantasy owners of Bijan, you're probably happy today, even though the Falcons lost. With this loss, though, did the Falcons get exposed as frauds, or do you still believe in them?
I think they did kind of get exposed, but I don't know if I would say completely as frauds. It's just kind of who I thought they were. I thought they were a team that could be competitive, might win their division, and disappoint in the playoffs. They're limited. Absolutely, they're limited, because when Kirk Cousins has a bad game, as he did today, 24 for 35, 232 yards, a touchdown, the 2 picks, and then I think he got strip sacked as well, if I'm not making that up.
He did.
You're right. They struggle. So
I think strip sack for a touchdown.
A touchdown. Yeah, absolutely. So without the turnovers, this game is a little bit more manageable. I think they had 3 turnovers in Seattle, and Seattle had none. We know Seattle's good when they can protect Geno. I mean, when they can give Geno time and he can stand back there and deliver, he can tear you up. I mean, he was on fire today. He was absolutely fantastic. 18 for 28, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker had himself a day. Kirk Cousins was good, but it's the typical kind of Kirk Cousins experience. So Atlanta kind of is what Minnesota was with Kirk Cousins. If everything goes right, they're really good and they can tear you up. But if you start to hit him and you start to disrupt him, things fall apart. That's it. If he never got hit, he'd be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But if you get through, you disrupt him, you hit him, you sack him, you force turnovers, the game gets away from you. That's what you saw happen today. That's the script to beat Atlanta.
Yeah, and look, it's not really a knock against Kirk Cousins. I mean, for an older quarterback, like, he's playing better football than most. I mean, I would take Kirk Cousins over a lot of quarterbacks starting in the league right now. By far. Like, would you rather have Kirk Cousins or a healthy Tua?
Probably Kirk Cousins, yeah.
Yeah, I would probably take Kirk Cousins at this point, right? So there's a lot of quarterbacks that I would put under Kirk Cousins, but I think, to your point, I was going to say it. You beat me to it. If Kirk Cousins is going to win a football game, he can't be hit.
Yeah.
He is just the same as where he was, at the Vikings. And even when he was younger, he still wasn't this dynamic, scrambling quarterback, and never has been, never will.
No, he's never been. He's a pocket quarterback.
But as far as pocket quarterbacks go, he's one of the best. So I think if Atlanta can find a way to keep him safer and not let the line collapse around him, then they win football games. I mean, they won against the Panthers. They beat the Bucs. They beat the Saints. They almost beat the Chiefs. That was a very close football game. They beat the Eagles. And then all the way back in week 1, they did lose against the Steelers. Again, another top-rated defense. So I think when you start playing these teams that have really strong defenses, like the Chiefs, like the Steelers, their other 2 losses, you find a way to win football games. When you can shut Kirk Cousins down in the pocket, that's your script to success.
It really is that simple. It's kind of like the whole, like Kyler Murray, get him outside the pocket. Keep Kyler Murray in the pocket,
yeah.
And you beat him. Get him outside the pocket, you're in trouble.
The complete opposite as Kirk Cousins.
Right. Force Kirk Cousins out or hit him, get to him. And he gets, off kilter and starts making mistakes. The bigger problem for Atlanta, honestly, though, even besides that, because even knowing all that, I mean, they went and signed Kirk Cousins. They knew who he was. You can live with all that. I mean, they're the 6th best offense as far as yards a game goes. The problem is the defense. They don't have any room for error defensively because they just are giving up too many yards, giving up too many points. Ryan, just the last 3 games, they've given up 84 points. 84 points in 3 games. So that's a minimum. They're giving up 28 points a game. You can't do that. I mean, they're not good enough to do that. So that's what I see. I see an offense that can move the ball, that can put up points if everything goes right. They can get protection, even though they're a little up and down. But the defense just is not good enough to really contend with the top teams.
They are tied for the lowest total in the NFL with sacks, 6 sacks on the season.
Yeah,
their pass rush is 6th worst in the entire NFL, 34.4%.
6th worst pass rush in the NFL.
Yes.
Well, that's something we talked about going back all the way to the draft when they drafted Penix. Maybe that'll end up working out. We were like, Why not go take a Dallas Turner, take an edge rusher? They went and traded for Judon from New England, but let's be honest, he hasn't looked how they hoped he would, how I thought he would. Judon, he kind of looks like a shell of himself. They struggle to get pressure. That's the number one thing. I talked about them giving up points, but it kind of boils down to that. Secondary's all right. They just can't get pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And then there was a quote here from Jimmy Lake, which is their defensive coordinator. He said that the team's right on track. Hey, buddy, I don't think so.
Those tracks are rusted.
You also, by the way, in this game, the Falcons had 9 penalties for 72 yards. That's big time. How do you win football games when you've given up almost 100 yards in penalties?
You don't. It goes back to kind of why we've talked about some other teams. There are teams like the Atlanta, they're good, but they just don't have a lot of wiggle room. When you start having mistakes and turnovers, and like you don't have a great units on both sides of the ball that overcome that. And just looking big picture, like the Falcons are going to have a good regular season. They could still win the NFC South. It's between them and Tampa Bay. We'll see what Tampa does. Obviously, they won the head-to-head right now. So it could go either way. They could win the division. They could host a playoff game. But I'm glad you brought up the point about the pass rush, because that's kind of what it all revolves around now that you mention it. When it gets into the playoffs, Ryan, you know this as well as I do. Anybody that's watched football for any amount of time knows this. You have to have a pass rush to win playoff games. It doesn't have to be elite, but if you cannot get in there and affect the quarterback on big downs, and when you've got to have it in those big moments, you won't win in the playoffs. That's where this season's going. Falcons will get in the playoffs, and they're not going to be able to get pressure, get sacks, force turnovers, and it'll end up forcing their exit. So they're a good team, but they are a flawed team. Frauds might be a step too far, but very flawed.
All right, well, we got to talk about it, and there's never been a more adequate name for how the season is going for the Browns other than their name, the Browns. It is just a crappy situation all around. Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, seems to have ruptured his Achilles, the last I heard, and you could even see it happen because it's been pretty popular this year. It's a terrible situation for Deshaun. On the plus side, it does look like Massage Envy will be getting their sponsorship back.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. They needed that. They've been hurting.
They sure did. Now that Deshaun has a lot of free time on his hands, who knows what will happen? But there was a carousel of quarterbacks going around. Jameis Winston made an appearance. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which I hate when people use all 3 of their names. It is one of my biggest pet peeves. But for the sake of argument, let's just call him DTR because we have to do that. And I think that for the Browns, there's a lot of controversy going on because there was actually cheers for when Deshaun went down. And I understand where they're coming from. I still don't agree with that. It's kind of still just a kind of shady thing to do. I do believe in more integrity in the football game, more character. But I completely agree because as soon as DTR came out, it seemed like the offense took a little step up. It's like somebody had a meter and it just went a little bit up. Then Jameis Winston comes out and they start scoring touchdowns. So tell me your evaluation on everything that happened with the Browns today.
To your point about the fans booing and stuff, I'm with you. Like, it's like, I wouldn't do that. And you're like, oh man, don't do that. You never wouldn't boo an injury. They would. Here's the thing, though. They would not they would not cheer an injury if it was just because he had been bad. It's because he's a scumbag, too. Like, I'm sorry. I don't feel bad. I do not feel bad for this guy. I mean, the man sexually assaulted 30 plus women. I mean, like, what are we doing here? And it's not like, oh, he said, she said. Like, we know what happened. So then you bend a franchise over for everything they're worth, go in there, and on top of it, are terrible. And then the fans get excited when you're knocked out. Yeah, it's not very classy, and I wouldn't do it, and I don't like to see that. But I don't blame them, and I don't feel bad for the guy. I'm sorry, I just don't. Hot take, you don't either. You know you don't. Let's just be honest. Well, how can you? With that said, obviously you hope they're going to be better without him. They looked better immediately as soon as DTR came in, even though he struggled. Jameis Winston came in a little bit. If DTR could be serviceable, that would be ideal because he's on, a rookie deal. Regardless, you don't think DTR can be as bad as Deshaun was. The problem, though, is they're not getting away from this. The cap hit for Deshaun Watson in 2025, $72 million, $72 million, $72 million, $26 million. If they cut him before June 1, the dead cap hit would be $200 million, $172 for next year, $99 the year after. They're not getting out of it. There is no way out of it. they're screwed when they went and did the contract. All you can do is take your medicine now. I've heard some people say, do you trade Myles Garrett, get that contract off, get some capital back? I think you just have to accept the organization is useless for 2 to 3 years. I wouldn't really, if Myles Garrett wanted to be traded, I would do it, but I would basically just accept it and just say, hey, we got sucked for 2 to 3 years. The only way out of this is similar to what the Saints are going to have to do regarding their cap situation. You have to take your medicine. That's it.
Yeah, and I think, moving on from Amari Cooper, trading him off was a step to say that, hey, the white flag situation, like you said last week, it was kind of them just surrendering. They're kind of preparing for what they'll have to do. I think today kind of just, solidifies the fact that they're going to have to move on from Deshaun Watson. And like you said, take their medicine, drink the poison, whatever it is that you want to say. Myles Garrett, I wouldn't voluntarily just try to ship him out. But I don't see, if you say this organization's shot for 2 or 3 years, I don't see somebody like Myles Garrett wanting to stay on a team for 2 or 3 years,
right,
and wasting his career away.
I would do it for him just because if I'm running the Browns, everything he's given this franchise, I'd be like, I would go to him and be honest with him, be like, we're irrelevant for the next couple of years. If you want to go somewhere else, I will trade you.
And he's out there, I just read a couple articles before the segment started. He's out there defending Deshaun Watson left and right about his character and everything like that. Don't really think you should probably choose who you want to defend about character out and about. If he wants to be shipped out, I don't blame him because he's an older guy. I wouldn't hate the fact that, if he wants to come to the Bills, we'll take him too.
Well, they might as well, at this point where you just have to take your medicine, you might as well just ship off everyone that has any kind of significant contract because you're not going to compete. There's no way around it. So you can't clear the books. You're even if you cut Deshaun Watson, the money's still there. They will probably end up cutting him, but you still got to pay him. With that said, maybe you can trade some of these other players that have high value contracts on your team, however many of them there are. I don't know. I'm not looking at their cap situation right now. Just get rid of all of them, get as much draft capital as you can, and hope you just hit in the draft and start building. Because we like to say, it's a long time, but those 3 years are going to go by one way or another. You messed up when you ran Baker out of town, but you just have to live with it. The best thing they can do is acknowledge it, tear it down, and just accept it. That's the quickest way forward and the most efficient way forward is just saying, hey, this is it. Let's go. Kevin Stefanski's probably going to lead because he's a good coach. And on top of it, I assume this is probably the popular opinion. I don't know. Deshaun Watson never steps on the football field again, right?
Maybe
for anyone. I don't think for anyone. I don't think we ever see him play football again.
No, never play football again. I mean, he may come out, he may step on a high school football field to coach somebody one day.
Yeah, if he sees a masseuse somewhere.
Let's wrap it up.
He'd run onto the field in that case.
So my Achilles isn't that bad, guys.
It's fine.
All right. Well, look, week 7 is in the books, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was a much better week than last week. I love football. I don't know if I've said this before, but I do love football. I love the game. I love everything about it. We didn't touch on every team this week. We touched on the big ones. One I will like to just point out real quick is the one that ended tonight, the Jets at the Steelers. The Steelers handled the Jets 37-15. What a win. Mike Tomlin has this team cooking with Russ behind center. What do you make of that? That's the last thing I want to touch on, and you can close this out. But just real quick, eagle eye view, what do you think?
I tried to warn you, buddy. I tried to tell you to stop riding with the Jets. You're like, no, man.
Look, hey, we're not talking about that. I asked you about Russ. I didn't ask you about the Jets. I didn't ask you about my take on the Jets, okay?
I know. You conveniently steered around that one.
I thought the Jets' defense was better than this. They're not.
I know. Well, first off, Jets falling to 2-5. Their season's over. Devontae Adams has to be thinking, what the hell was I doing? I don't know why he wanted to get the trade there. Russ, 16-29, 264, 2 touchdowns. I didn't watch the game because we were prepping to do the show, so I can't really have a detailed opinion. I thought it was crazy talk to send him on the field instead of Justin Fields, even though I don't think Fields is terrific. It's like, what are you getting out of Russ that Fields isn't giving you? He might be serviceable for a couple games, but I feel like it's basically the same situation. I'd rather go with the young guy. The Steelers, I'm sorry, Steelers fans, they're what they always are. They're really boring, and they win football games. They finish above 500, they make the playoffs, and they get embarrassed in the first game. That's what the Steelers do, and the Jets, go 2-17. I mean, that's what these organizations do.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think that Russ would have this good of a game coming out against the Jets tonight. So
I'm
kudos
not
to him.
stunned because we haven't seen him this year, so it's hard to kind of prep for him. You're going back to last year. You haven't seen him in this offense. I think as the weeks progress, if he continues to start, you'll start to see, Russ regress back to the mean, so to speak.
Aside from last week against the Raiders, the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't scored over 30 points once this year. So, take it for what you will. 37 points against a Jets team that we thought, their defense is. I know their defense is better than the Raiders, okay? And so I just think that for Russ, an old man to come out and have a night like he did tonight, hey, it's pretty good. I'll call a spade a spade.
Pat him on the back. I'm just saying, we see this a lot in the NFL where...
What if they just play this game all year? They just switch quarterbacks every other week to keep teams on their toes. You can never prepare for them.
Yeah, I mean, that probably wouldn't be a terrible idea. But
why not?
As the weeks progress, you'll start to get more film with Russell Wilson in this offense, see what they're going to do. We'll see. I don't get excited talking about the Steelers because we know what they're going to do every year. But with you, this is one of the best weeks of the year. This season is awesome. It's unpredictable. It's shaping up to be exciting. And the Chiefs are the only undefeated team. Just throwing that in there. But anything can happen. Ravens are playing Tampa Bay. I'll be excited to watch that game. That's going to be fun. Thanks for being with me, man. I love talking football. I can't wait to get back next week. And do it again. Make sure everyone watching like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. Two idiots covering one sport. We'll be back on Friday to do our weekly picks. I think I made up a little ground this week. And we'll see you. Have a safe week. For Ryan, I'm Tristan. See you guys later. Goodbye.